Welcome. I'm Colonel Pete Huble with the NGAUS Aviation Task Force. With me today I have Major General Retired Jeff Schlosser, who is the Executive Vice President for Strategic Pursuits with Bell. And I also have with me Colonel Retired Chad Smith, who's the Vice President of Strategic Pursuits for Rolls-Royce. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us. Thanks to NGAUS for having us.
Yes, sir.
We're excited to be here.
So today we'll be discussing with them the future long-range assault aircraft that the U.S. Army has recently selected. And sir, with that, if you'd like to open for us.
Yeah, absolutely, Pete. And again, let me just say that, echo this again, I think it's really a great time for NGAUS to ask both Chad and I to come and talk about the future long-range assault aircraft, or FLRAA program. You know, this platform and the capability that it represents, I think it's absolutely critical for the National Guard and the rest of the active Army, as well as the Army Reserve. And I'll explain why in a few seconds. What I will say, though, is it's absolutely more critical that America have a capability that is twice as fast and has twice the range of our current fleets of Black Hawk and the other legacy aircraft that we have out there. When you look at the Indo-Pacific, it's distance that you have and time that you have to be able to beat. And so being twice as fast, twice as far gives you a capability that is going to be critical in the next, whatever it's just deterring our competitors out there, or if it's actually having to go to a war fight. So I think that that's really important. The second part is when you look around the rest of the world, it's high time now that we move beyond aircraft that were, essentially but designed and initially built 40, 50 years ago. You, as a maintainer in the National Guard or as a pilot in the National Guard aviator, you should be able to expect more modern aircraft that are easier to maintain, easier to sustain, even though they have twice the speed and twice the range. And so I think that's absolutely, it's high time that we actually talk with everybody out there. I will say another thing, though, to the audience is that this isn't just some sort of science project for the active Army. It's going to be very important that the entire force, the National Guard, the Army Reserve, and the active component be fielded with this kind of capability. I'm really looking forward to seeing the program develop and move out, and we'll start flying here quite soon. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Pete, to the NGAUS and all the leadership in the National Guard. We at Rolls-Royce are just thrilled to be a part of this program. Our friends at Bell that we work with every day to develop this future long-range assault aircraft. And it's time now. It's the right time, the right people, the right place, and the right product. And we in the national defense world, we need this aircraft for our soldiers. We need this capability to survive and protect our soldiers on the next battlefield. So thanks for doing this. General Schlosser and I talk quite often, and as teammates, and we feel like that there's nothing right now that is more important in Army aviation and getting this program on board, and we need the National Guard and all my friends out there to help us ensure this program stays on time.
That's well said.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for joining us. We've noticed that both Bell and Rolls-Royce seem to have a very strong working relationship with one another. How does this great teamwork lend itself to the success of the future long-range assault aircraft program?
Well, Pete, Chad probably want to pile on here, but I mean, we've been partners for the last 30 years at least, and both on our commercial helicopters as well as our military tilt rotors. The great V-22 with 750,000 hours on it, I think shows the value of both having a program of that nature and then being able to build the next generation based upon all that 750,000 hours.
The collaboration that we work together, the trust factor that Rolls-Royce and Bell have together, the communication that we talk to each other and have each other's personal cell phones and to be able to work together as teammates is huge to develop this future capability that is now, that we need in Army aviation. So those relationships, this professional relationships that we have and the trust that we share all build into this.
Chad, is the Rolls-Royce engine that has been selected for the FLRAA program a production engine, or was it specifically developed for this application?
So great question. So the engine that we are using for the FLRAA program is the AE1107F engine. It's part of a long line of AE engines, which we have produced over 7,500, flown over 87 million of flight hours, in service today with the C-130J, the V-22 that General Schlosser spoke about earlier, Global Hawk. And it's also made in America. And it's right here in the heart of America, in Indianapolis. We have a dependable, reliable, cost-effectively engine that's low risk and is ready to go now. So we are thrilled about this opportunity.
What enhanced capabilities will that Rolls-Royce power plant bring to the platform?
And this is something also near and dear to our heart at Rolls-Royce. It's an end-to-end propulsion system. It has an inlet barrier filter, which increases flight time, as aviators love to say, or time on the wing, by removing sand and dust particles. It also has the AE1107 engine, which are about 80% common for all the AE engines, and they have a common core throughout the AE family. And then it has, of course, an IR suppression system, which greatly increases on the modern battlefield survivability for the crew flying it.
How are Bell and Rolls-Royce developing manufacturing capacity in parallel with aircraft capabilities?
Yeah, I know that Rolls has done a lot, so Chad should speak to that. But let me tell you about Bell Textron's done. So just several years ago, we decided that we would use our capital investment to build a manufacturing technology center. And at the center, what you see, Pete, is that you'd expect additive manufacturing, but you also have advanced manufacturing machines, all tied together with software that really, from my viewpoint, looks like artificial intelligence. The whole purpose of it is to cut the time that it requires to build a very high quality part, to cut down, to reduce what we call waste, basically, or the scrap from it, and be able to reduce, therefore, cost to the American taxpayer. At the same time that we are actually building parts right now for our prototype FLRAA aircraft, we just last week opened up our Weapons Systems Integration Laboratory, again a capital investment from Bell, where you include the operating system, basically, the flight control system, but then you put your weapon systems or your mission systems on top of that and tied it together with software. This is not just in a collaborative environment or a virtual environment. You actually see actual pumps pushing hydraulic fluid that have moved different parts in the back while the pilots are up there flying in a simulator. And so basically we call it Aircraft Zero. And while we've been doing both of those projects, we are completing a drive systems test laboratory. Every prop or every gearbox that goes on the aircraft will be, first of all, the risk reduced there, and then before we ever put that part and would deliver it to the U.S. Army or other services, it'll be tested there. So the test lab is, again, another capital investment. 3 major capital investment programs from Bell for the FLRAA program.
That's tremendous, sir. I tell you, Rolls-Royce takes this also with a lot of pride. We have invested over $600 million in advanced manufacturing technological capabilities there in Indianapolis, producing this AE engine line. We are by far feel that we're the most premier engine facility in the entire United States, and we're near closing another $400 million in manufacturing test equipment there in Indianapolis. So almost $1 billion, a little over $1 billion spent on facilities for this program.
Speaking of those investments, are your research and development efforts completely funded by the Army, or are you also investing your own capital?
Yeah, that's a great question, Pete. So back in when we started this program, in fact, when I first came onto it with Bell, and we were designing a demonstrator for what would eventually become the FLRAA program, it required a significant amount of investment, not only from Bell Textron, but also from our partnering, our key teammates, our key partners. That's continued over the last decade. I mean, as you know, I think most folks know, the demonstrator actually flew from 2017 for about 2.5 years. We flew over 200 hours of flight time in it. And all of that required a significant amount of investment from Bell and Textron as well as our partners. Even today, as we finish off our weapon systems development contract, there's still a fair amount of skin in the game, I would say, from industry as we go forward. I think it's a great investment obviously it was very smart from the Army's perspective and Department of Defense, but I think it's also a good investment for the American taxpayer.
How are you addressing issues and concerns with supply chain management specifically to reduce some of the risk to cost and schedule?
Well, I think supply chain issues are going to continue. There's not a simple way to basically mitigate everything that applies to the supply chain issues. What I will say is though we have for a long period of time planned years in advance, both on our commercial fleet as well as our military fleet. No change, no difference there. Plan to the future. We try to do long lead material, purchases, and we are constantly trying to understand what is happening to the supply chain before it happens on the manufacturing line or the assembly line. I'm sure it's the same thing at Rolls.
Sir, it's very similar. We feel like that at Rolls-Royce that the supply challenges are going to continue for the next 12 to 18 months. But the things that we can do to mitigate the risk, we have, of course, an established engine line there in Indianapolis. We are already producing aircraft for the Air Force, the Marine Corps, the Navy, the Coast Guard, and commercial industry customers. So our suppliers know and realize that, hey, we have to have these. These is national security. So we have great relationships and strong suppliers to help mitigate some of these challenges.
Where is it specifically that Bell is looking to produce or manufacture the FLRAA?
Yeah, so after winning the program, we've gotten an awful lot of friends throughout many states. I will say that, Pete. Bell, as even before we had won the program, we were starting to look at where would we scale that manufacturing technology center, which I said right now is building prototype parts and things like that. How do you scale that to be able to build up production level numbers? So we've looked at several states. We've looked at several sites within the states. We still haven't made a decision yet, but it's coming along. And like I said, we've gotten an awful lot of friends, cards and letters recently about it. So thanks for asking.
When do you predict that we can see the first flyable prototype aircraft in its operational form?
Yeah, so right now where we are at, and again, I realize not everybody knows all the acronyms for Army acquisition or defense acquisition, but we are approaching a milestone, and at that milestone, we will become, which is, by the way, just in a few months from now, we will become a program of record, a formal program of record underneath the Army or the defense acquisition rules and regulations. From there, I would suspect it's going to be essentially just probably maybe 2 years. We're already working on the final, we're doing the primary design right now. We're doing the virtual prototyping for basically a simulator that is on steroids with digital engineering that will allow the Army to run through a number of different simulations well beyond just flying the aircraft, but being able to work in a variety of different environments there. My guess would be in about 2 years you'll be able to see the first of 6 prototypes delivered to the Army and start to fly. And again, it's the Army's choice. They can change the schedule, but that's what I think we're seeing. That's what we're seeing in the budget that was just recently released, and that's where we're going. We're trying to execute, as my boss says, the CEO.
Do you expect there to be a collective unit training program similar to what the Army has done in the past with new equipment training, or are there demands to this platform and this approach that are driving that?
Well, let me just say that the Army right now is looking at it very hard. They're taking a whole system approach, using DAL and PF. They're looking at doctrine, looking at operations, maintenance, training, and facilities. And what I would say is because it's a tilt rotor doesn't mean that you have to do anything very unique or anything like that. What I would say is I don't, at this point in time, I'm not exactly certain which model the Army's going to use or if it's going to use a hybrid. As you know, my age, most of you folks know that, the Apache was fielded through the 21st Brigade. We did an awful lot of other fielding, both at Watts and Eats and things of that nature. we'll have to see. I don't know that if the Army at this point is ready to make that decision at this point in time. It could be a hybrid model. You could see various ways of going about the process.
What specifically are you hearing about fielding to the Army National Guard?
Well, there's no doubt that, I quote this often, good friend and former Chief of Staff of the Army, General McConville, when he was talking about the FLRAA program, always highlighted that the National Guard would be concurrently fielded with the platform. I think most people know that are in the audience, or if you don't, I'll tell you. I served in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kosovo, and I did it with the National Guard, always as battle buddies and battle sisters as we went about the process. The active Army's never going to go into a conflict that I'm aware of without the National Guard, and so the National Guard needs to be fielded, in my opinion, concurrently and proportional to it. I don't think that the Army is going to be wildly out of whack with that.
And how does Bell view FLRAA's capabilities to be developed to support domestic operations, and what technology are you integrating in the platform to be able to support that?
Well, let me just say that with all my friends that have done domestic operations or done operations of that nature, including humanitarian assistance, which I have done outside of the United States, no one ever asked me to come fast or slower. And oh, by the way, can you stop en route 2 or 3 times just to to be able to get some fuel? Nobody's ever asked that. In fact, it's usually been, can you get here faster, and can you fly direct so I don't have to put fuel out on the ground? And oh, by the way, when you get here, it needs to be a small footprint. I don't have enough room for a whole Army worth of maintainers. And so I think what you're seeing is that this capability, whether it's a large-scale combat operation, whether it's in the Indo-Pacific, island hopping all the way up into the first island chain, warning to the competitor out there, or whatever, you're going to see that in the environment inside the United States or overseas requires speed, range, get there faster, get there further, and be able to do more in less time. So I think it's got a great applicability, whether it's in Rhode Island or in Texas or California or Alaska.
Great. It seems that both Bell and Rolls-Royce have a significant amount of veteran talent on your staff and on your team, that you guys are actively hiring former Army aviators to be part of that team. How does that lend itself to credibility and experience in your?
Let me speak for Bell Textron, and then I know Chad will speak for Rolls. We really pride ourselves on having a large number of vets inside our Bell team. We also have a fair number of National Guardsmen and women that are still on duty. In other words, they're still performing. They deploy, and Bell supports them strongly and their families throughout their deployment. There's no doubt in my mind that having recency of experience, whether it's in combat, whether it's in a humanitarian operation, whether it's a hurricane environment or whatever, that experience going back and trying to help us develop the right ways to either fix an aircraft, build an aircraft, design an aircraft, really makes it much more powerful. We're a better company because of our veterans.
Great point, sir. I'd just like to add, on top of what General Schlosser just said, one of the things that I wanted to do when I left service was I wanted to be able to continue to serve, and in some indirect way, I feel like I do this every day. I feel like I can go back and touch the people that we worked with, that we served with, went in theater with, went in combat with. This aircraft, I get excited because in some way every day I feel like we at Rolls feel like we're helping to save lives. If this aircraft goes into the medevac community, which it will, we can go get soldiers or injured personnel on the battlefield twice as fast, and the capabilities that it brings. So it gives me, when I'm tired or been traveling a lot or whatever, I realize that the people that are going to use these airplanes and helicopters to go into battle, they will be able to designed by veterans that understand what they're going through.
Pete, I tell you, I've told Chad this before, is that when I get up in the morning, I know what I'm doing. I'm protecting my nation, I'm making our Army stronger, and I'm working with a lot of great folks and a lot of great partners.
Amen. I feel the same way, sir.
Gentlemen, to support that effort, how can the National Guard Association and the National Guard Enterprise assist in the in the future long-range assault aircraft.
Well, Pete, first to you and as well as to the NGAUS team as well as the task force, just the interest in the future long-range assault platform itself and its capabilities and you know when it's fielding to whom and things like that, that is primary. What I would say is that it can't be one and done. Maintain that interest, keep asking questions, keep asking the Army about this platform. The second part of it is the strength of the National Guard in advocacy is critical, I believe, to almost any program out there for the United States Army, as well as, you know, the truth is the United States Air Force as well. Advocating for the program. So one, educating yourself about the program, and then advocating it with your elected officials, I think is absolutely critical as we go forward. The Congress plays a very significant role. It pays for these programs, and it represents you know, the U.S. taxpayer, and they want an effective and an efficient program. So doing all those three things, I think, are absolutely critical. You know, learn about it, advocate for it, and then work with your congressmen and women to ensure that the program stays alive.
Excellent point, sir. I can't really add much to that other than the fact that my friends that are out in the Guard community that we communicate with, they understand the importance of this aircraft and how it can save lives and what it can do for us not only domestically but in combat. And so with that, if you take that to heart, Pete, and you take that as your centermost thought process about going twice as far and twice as fast, you take that back to your congressional delegates. When I talk to my adjutant generals out there and I bounce around the 54 states and territories, that's one of the things that I keep, you know, hampering on and talking about is how much we will be better and quicker and faster to be able to, once this aircraft gets fielded into the Guard.
Well, gentlemen, we thank you for your time. We thank you for your efforts. We look forward to continuing to work with you on this project. And thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank
you
Pete.
for having us.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you too, Chad.
Yes,
and
sir.
thank you, Pete. Thanks.
Appreciate it.